Well, hello, my peri and postmenopausers. So listen, we talk so much about all the things that can happen and the side effects and the way we think about things. But here is something that is really important. It can sneak up on you, and we don't always talk about it. And that is nutrient absorption. So this is definitely more of a foodie type of talk today. So what does it really mean? When we think about the food we eat, and we're always talking about, right, the emphasis on protein, the right amount of carbohydrates, the right amount of dietary fats, the right amount of fiber, the insoluble and soluble fiber. But it's not just about the what we eat and how much of it, it's what can our bodies absorb. And sometimes during this process, we have to remember that estrogen receptors float all the way through the intestinal tract. So that's why so many of you can actually start to see a little bit of some gastrointestinal issues in this time frame. In this point where you may be perimenopausal and you're starting to see a lot of symptoms, or you are postmenopausal and you're definitely seeing, wow, food just does not digest the same for me, or I can't take the same quantity, or it's certain types of food that just do not work well for you anymore. And it's because as estrogen declines, it also declines inside that intestinal tract. And so you can see some digestive things change. But here's why it's important. Oftentimes when we feel like we're just healthy, we don't always pay attention. I like to call it how food feels. Sometimes we just eat things and you may say, gosh, that food makes me bloated. Or this may be a trigger warning for some of you, but y'all know who you are listening to this. Those of you who know, say you are sensitive to dairy or actually allergic to dairy, but you eat things that have dairy in it anyway. You know that you shouldn't eat cheesecake, but you still eat it and it sends you directly to the bathroom. Or you know you shouldn't eat ice cream and you do it anyway. And there's so many more things that we could list off. And everybody's so different. So sometimes it's not this big stuff that we think about. Sometimes it's just the small things that affect you. And nobody can tell you that except you. It could be a certain protein that just doesn't agree with you anymore. It could be eggs, it could be an apple, anything that you know, man, that just makes me feel sick, or it gives me diarrhea almost instantly or within an hour. And so many of you are probably dealing with that, but you just kind of let it go and you blow it off. But here's the problem. The longer that you deal with that, the harder it is for your body to actually absorb nutrients, because you're constantly in what we call an inflammatory state through your intestines or either through your bowels. Those of you who've had multiple C-sections, if you've had a hysterectomy, if you've had fibroid removal surgery, any of these types of abdominal surgeries, those of you who've had lipo, those of you who've had tummy tucks, these are things, or those of you who wear waist trainers, these are things that can affect function of the intestinal tract in the first place. Any of you who already had IBS, possibly if you had Crohn's, or if you have Crohn's, if you have any type of irritable bowel syndrome, if you have diverticulitis or diverticulosis, anything where you already had some struggles digestively, they can be exacerbated in this stage of life, which is all the more reason why we have to eat the things that make sense for us, things that do not cause us to be inflamed. So some of that can also be things we drink. Those of you who may be wine or alcohol drinkers, you may know that it's just not good for you. It's increasing your hot flashes, it can increase your night sweats, but it also can possibly cause your stomach to be very, very upset, even to vomiting. And so you need to pay attention to that, because that yet again will start to impact your ability to absorb food. When we start to not have good absorption, this is when we start to have deficiencies. And those deficiencies can turn into even more of the feeling of fatigue. And you think it's just associated with, gosh, I'm just older, or it's just this menopause is kicking my butt. No, it's because potentially you are not absorbing food. I'm going to give you other examples. Those of you who are constantly taking laxatives, if you are constantly using stool softeners, if you're someone who is constantly doing cleanses and you're flushing things out of your body, the more you do that, the harder it is for the intestinal tract, the walls of the intestine, which is actually just muscles. They basically pulsate all throughout the intestine to help move things along. It makes it harder for them to do their job. So then you end up with some concerns, and then you start to not be able to either go to the bathroom, you may be constipated, and all of those things are also nutrient absorption concerns as well. So what do you need to do? Number one, y'all, stop eating and doing things that you know just don't work for you. This is also why sleep is so so important. That's where recovery happens. That's where you get a chance to kind of like relax, of course, but you also get a chance to let your body, I call it decompress a little bit. It lets the organs relax. It lets that liver do what it's supposed to be doing to help you. It also means sometimes, y'all, number two, eating a little bit slower. Chew your food better. That can help fix a lot of concerns, right? Chewing slower. Number three is really listening to your body. Does your body tell you whether it's internally in your stomach or is there something happening, like you got hives, a rash, anything? Is something telling you your ears itch, your throat tickles? Is there anything happening when you eat certain things that may be new? Or you've been doing it all along and I'm telling you it's time to stop. Okay, because those are things that again will affect absorption. If you're not someone who's been exercising, this is the time. Walking after meals will help kind of speed things along and help you with the digestion of food properly. I think I'm on number 5, the right mix of fiber. If you are taking an abundance of fiber supplements, right? Sometimes it only has one type of fiber and you're missing the other piece. And if you're not drinking the right amount of water, then we're constipated too. So you want to have the right mix of soluble and insoluble fiber. And I'm going to attach that document to this video today. You'll see it at the bottom, okay? But it's important that you do that so that you're able to collect, right, those things that need to get out. Because when that intestinal tract is clear, it allows that small intestine and the large intestine to absorb where it's supposed to. And the majority of the food will be absorbed in the small, but then some is still absorbed through the large intestine, and then the large intestine will push things out. So they have so many functions that you need them to be able to work well. And that starts with putting the right things in that support you. And again, everybody is different. So really pay attention to what your body's saying. And then lastly, hydrating properly. And that is not always just drinking water, okay? Drinking water is one aspect and you definitely need to do a lot of it, but it's also actual hydration, which means do you have the right balance of water to salt? Those of you who live in very hot climates, those of you who may be athletes or you're outside a lot, beach goers, or you train outside, or maybe you a teacher, or there's something that you do where you are outside more often. If you're sweating a lot more, if you use saunas a lot, right? And I know many of you do that, then you need to make sure that you replace that salt, whether you're using an electrolyte pack, and we don't always need one that's like 1,000 milligrams, but say an electrolyte pack that's 500, that's kind of a easy going. There's some that may just be only an extra 250 or extra 300 milligrams, or there's some that are 500 to 700. For those of you who may be more of ultra marathoners, triathletes, or just those of you who are avid runners, joggers, you may need an electrolyte pack that's 1,000 milligrams, okay? CrossFitters, if those are things that you do. And so you need to make sure that you have enough salt to balance your water, right? Because that's how you can get dehydrated and then start to have some digestive problems as well. You want to eat a lot more hydrating foods. That could be the celery, the cucumber, tomatoes, pineapples, grapes. There's so many more. I'm just giving you some of the basics. Plums. There's so many options to allow you to become more hydrated without just drinking water. But those are ways to do it as well. So hopefully this gave you a different perspective. And again, I am attaching the form or the document that's about insoluble and soluble fiber. And I want you to go over that and make sure that those are kind of getting a good mix. But I also will attach a document called How Food Feels. And I want you to pay attention to how you feel when you eat certain things, because what we want is for that intestinal tract to be able to perform as optimally as it can. And that takes a lot of inputs from you to be able to do that right. And it takes you paying attention to the food. It takes you paying attention to things that make you feel sick and not doing that constantly so you don't have an inflamed body. So pay attention, look at that form, How Food Feels, and then also pay attention to the form on insoluble and soluble fiber. And you know what? I'm going to add one more, and it is how to do an effective elimination diet in the event that you're having a lot of intestinal issues and you are just not sure what food is doing it to you. You're not really sure. I'm going to tag that as well so that you may use it, or maybe somebody in your family, but that is a great resource to have as well. I cannot wait for you to use the tools, and also let me know what you think. Or as you go through this one, I love to hear what are those things that you realize after you really start to pay attention are things that have been bothering you that you just kind of been blowing off. All right. I'll see you soon.